Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be showing you the best method to get scrap. Now I know a lot of you will know most of the farms by now and you know the different methods of farming. However, in this video I'm going to be going through each and every farming method with an in-depth analysis in order to determine what is the most scrap per hour and what are the risks and other concerns that you need to take into consideration when deciding what is the best method of farming for you as an individual. The farming methods that I will be looking at today is farming the road, farming the monuments, farming hemp, farming trout, farming the ocean using the rowboat, motorboat, and rahib. And in order to make a fair analysis, what I'll be doing is recycling everything that I get and converting it all to scrap. In case you didn't know, you can convert all of your metal frags and HQM directly to scrap, and other things such as wood and low grade can be bought for scrap, but not the other way around. So in order to make it relatively fair, I converted it based on using that price exchange. After 3 minutes of farming the road, I had a full inventory, and once recycling all of it, this is what I was left with. I then went to bandit camp, sold my HQM metal frags cloth and anti-rad pills in order to convert it into scrap. Then I went to outpost to refine my crude, and based on the scrap exchange for low grade, I divided my low grade by 2 in order to get the rough value in scrap. Wood was similarly done with 20 scrap converting into 1k wood. So I was left with 275 scrap, 25 scrap worth of low grade, 14 scrap worth of wood, and the remaining cloth added up to around 4 scrap, and the bits of leather, charcoal and food I said was around 2 scrap valued. Therefore we have 320 scrap after 3 minutes of hitting the road. Now a massive disclaimer, I am not saying you'll get 320 scrap after 3 minutes of hitting the road. I'm saying that your inventory will be valued at around that, and the reason that I'm recycling and selling everything but not taking it into account of the time is because I'm trying to get a really accurate value for how much your inventory is worth. Do keep in mind that I will consider recycling times and selling times in the end of this video, but the reason that I've done all of this is just to condense that full inventory into one singular value so that we can make an accurate comparison. I then did the exact same thing with monuments, and I've already calculated how much scrap per hour the trout farm gives as well as the hemp farm. Then I head over to the fishing village, and in case you didn't know, ribs and regular boats will no longer spawn on the coast and you'll actually have to buy them from one of the 3 vendors. You can buy the kayak and paddle blueprint for quite cheap and just 75 scrap for the 2 of them, or you can buy a motorboat for 200 scrap or a rahib for 400. The kayak can only hold 2 people, however it doesn't use low grade. If both people are paddling, it can go quite fast, although it is a little bit difficult to stop and start quickly. However, if you practice with it, I'm sure you can get more efficient than I was. And in case you're wondering, all of this will be live on Rust servers in the upcoming patch. Then I head to the seas and farmed using all the 3 different types of boats, using a similar method to before, and then I recycled everything and converted it into scrap. Do note that my kayaking skills weren't that great, so I will factor that into my calculations. I also did subtract the low grade costs as the rahib and the motorboat burned through fuel. Then I pretty much just kept repeating this process until I started to see consistent results. Now here are the final results, however there's a lot of information here and there's a lot of information missing, so I'm going to go through everything. Okay, I'll start off by saying that this is not the amount of scrap you're going to get, this is the value of scrap you're going to get based out of items. Now keep in mind that low grade can't actually be converted to scrap, so most of these are inflated because I included low grade in the value. Now let's start off with the top. So obviously monument is the best. If you're running monuments, you can get an insane amount of scrap compared to just hitting the road. However, they're obviously going to be contested, and I'll go into that further later. Second up, hitting the road is the best, and the reason for this is because the barrels are all close together, and again you're going to be getting a little bit more competition. However, you do get more scrap per hour hitting the road as opposed to the ocean. Then moving down, we go to the ocean. Now I did consistently find that the motorboat was slightly better than the rahib, and the only reason for this is that maneuvering in and out of that boat is a lot easier. That being said, if you're on a high populated server and most of the main areas are contested and you're finding yourself traveling out to far areas in order to farm, then the rahib is actually slightly better because it has a faster travel time. Not only that, but the front of the box can carry more storage so you can stay out there for longer. Then moving on to the new kayak, which is extremely cheap. It is obviously going to be slightly worse. However, it's actually not that bad. If you have 2 people on it and you pick up enough speed, you can't exactly contest the rahib and motorboat, but you can actually farm a decent amount of scrap with it. And then finally we have the fish farm. Now do keep in mind for the other farms, I did include the low grade price as well as a few other things in the scrap total, whereas with the fish farm, you're only getting scrap. Not only that, but with the road and the kayak, you have to recycle quite frequently. With the rahib and the motorboat, it's not so bad because you have extra storage spaces, but all that recycling time definitely adds up, and so the fish farm is actually probably undervalued at 4,000 scrap. I would probably place it on par with the road. The only downside is that it's a lot of maintenance and can get quite boring, but it's up to you to try out. And if you're fine with the maintenance, it is completely safe to fish farm, so therefore if you're one who's weaker at PvP, then I would definitely place it above the road. And finally we have the hemp farm, and I can't put an exact number on this because the values range by so much. I actually did the math to determine how long it takes me to do a cloning cycle, replant the clones, and how long it takes to harvest. And at an absolute optimum level, a solo player could actually maintain 40 floors with 35 dedicated to farming and 5 dedicated just to cloning. And if he was cloning constantly and planting and harvesting constantly, and when I say constantly, I mean constantly, they could get around 45,000 scrap per hour. However, do note that 40 floors is not possible for a solo, so you're probably looking at closer to around 1,000 scrap per hour at passive levels, which means you're only probably doing around 5 minutes of maintenance. So in conclusion, at number 1 is monuments. These things are pretty much S tier, and if you can contest them, then by all means you should always be trying to do so. However, if it's just feasibly not possible because there's larger groups which are beating you every single time, then don't worry, you do have options. And it's not just if groups are contesting the monuments have respawn times, so there's many other reasons why you'd want to look to other areas. But if you are looking to other areas, then I would highly recommend going to the road or hitting the ocean with the motorboat. In my experience, it's more common that you'll find roads which are bare because people are constantly farming it, then you will find bare oceans. So for that reason, I would slightly value the scrap per output of the ocean above the road, because roads are not always going to be full. Now with all that being said, which one do I rate higher? Personally, I don't rate either of them higher, but there is a reason why you should stick to one over the other. And that reason is plain and simple. It's simply just your KD ratio. If you're dying more times than you're getting kills, then you're going to be losing out on scrap. And from my experience as well as many others, the ocean is often less contested, meaning that even if you're getting slightly less scrap per hour, but you're dying less times, that means you'll overall profit higher scrap, but you won't have the potential to steal scrap from others. Your KD ratio can be determined by your own individual skill, the number of people in your group, the number of people in other groups in the server pop, and many other factors. It's up to you to determine whether or not you're killing other people more than you're dying. So with all that information being said, my final thoughts and advice on what farms you should do and what methods of farming you should do comes down to this. For starters, a hemp farm. Should you do it? Should you not? If you've watched enough of my videos and you've practiced it on a private server, I would recommend setting up a hemp farm if you're playing the server for more than 2 days, because then the return will be worth it. If you're only planning on playing for a couple of days, then going through all that effort to set up a large farm is probably not worth your time. Moving on, you should always be doing monuments if you can contest them. If it's feasibly not possible, that's fine, there's other options, but if you can, you should always be trying to contest monuments. Then moving on to the road versus the ocean, I think both are respectively equal in their own rights. You can do whichever one you want after the information that I've given to you. Now that you know about the new boats, should you buy a rahib or a rowboat, I think it's pretty clear to see that you should only buy a rahib if you're going to do oil rig, as the travel time's a lot quicker. However, when you're just farming the ocean, the motorboat is cheaper because not only does it cost less scrap, but it burns less fuel, resulting in higher profits overall. And if you're a solo and you don't have much scrap to just throw out on rowboats, then yes, of course you can get the kayak. If you're a duo, even better. The kayak is actually quite viable, although do keep in mind it takes a little bit of practice to get used to the turning mechanisms, but once you're down packed, you can actually get quite a lot of scrap with it. Finally, the fish farm isn't actually that good once you crunch the numbers. However, you can do it while staying indoors, so it can be quite viable if you're afraid of dying when you're getting scrap. And finally, I also wanted to mention that I did try scuba diving, but the scrap per hour is just so much lower than all the other methods that I would never recommend scuba diving at this current point in time. They need to add an item which allows us to cut the rope a lot quicker, but maybe that's for the future. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with the fish and hemp farm, make sure to go check out my other videos as I have updated guides on both of them. So that's the end of this video. I hope that my analysis was helpful, and yes, there's many other things that I didn't cover but I could go more in depth to, and maybe I'll do that in future videos. However, this is just a basis to help you farm scrap in the most efficient way possible. What do you think about us having to buy the new motorboats, and what do you think about the new kayak? Are you going to try farming on it, or do you think it's not worth your time? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, I hope to see you in the next one.